Greetings, Malifaux fans. This is Crazy Carl back with another Malifaux video battle report. I'm bringing you something a little bit special today. It's from a scenario that I actually wrote myself. There was a contest recently on the Weird Forums that I'm sure many of you are aware of. I submitted a pair of scenarios, one of which actually ended up winning. It was not the scenario we're playing right now. I actually played that after this game, but I did not cover that one, so you're just going to have to learn about that another way, I guess. This was the other scenario I wrote. It was the Malifaux Cleaver Massacre. So it was a play on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, making it kind of a Halloween-y type thing. In this scenario, you had Killjoy running around rampant after gorging himself on a bunch of random civilians in Malifaux. So Killjoy's pretty deadly to begin with, but with my scenario rules, I gave him fast and charges costing a 1 action. So it was he was pretty deadly. The way the scenario worked is Killjoy started in the center of the table, and at the end of every activation phase, Killjoy would activate. He would move close to the closest model to him, so as the crow flies, so if there was a giant wall in the way, he would try and walk around the wall because he's just that stupid. And he would try and get to wherever that closest model was. What would happen is he would then attack. He would do as many attacks as he could until he either killed something, and if he killed something, he'd walk to something else, and then so on and so forth. And there were a bunch of rules for randomizing control of Killjoy, which weren't really necessary, but it's there just so that people could play multiplayer. You can look it up on the forums if you want. But basically, the way you win the scenario is by a couple things. First, you needed there are 4 victory conditions, each worth a point. If you killed Killjoy, you got a point. If you lost the fewest number of models of Killjoy, you got a point. If you were charged by Killjoy, you got a point. And then if you lost a morale duel to Killjoy, you also got a point. So it should have been. It proved to be a very interesting game, and I hope you guys enjoy it. As you can see, it was Outcasts, played by Jenna, and I was playing the Rezzers as per normal. Jenna, as you saw in her crew just there, were the Viks, with a Librarian, Taylor, Convict Gunslinger, and 2 Ronin. And Jenna also had some awesome schemes. She took First Blood with the Viks, which is their Master Civic scheme, and she hid Gather Soulstones from me. I thought she was going to take something like Bodyguard or Holdout, but Gather Soulstones is an interesting one. I'm not sure off the top of my head if you can actually hide it. We may have gotten that wrong, but whatever. Still pretty cool. I brought along Nicodem, and she had a 5 Soulstone cache. I brought along Nicodem with a Grave Spirit attached, 3 Punk Zombies, Rafkin, a Bell, and 3 Canine Remains. The thinking there is I brought the Punk Zombies and Rafkin so that you'd have the Punk Zombies as a wall. Basically, my plan was to bolster them with Nicodem, so putting them up to CB or Defense 7, which is pretty good at defending against Killjoy's CB 7, and then I'd have Rafkin give them hard to kill. So even if Killjoy got off his gigantic Mondo death attacks, they'd hopefully be able to stick around and then hopefully flurry him and kill him in the next activation. But as you'll see, that did not exactly go as I planned. And then Rafkin was in there to, in addition to that, he was also in there to provide a easy, cheap-ish model to fail the morale duel. Because the rules I wrote specified a non-master had to fail the morale duel. So it was encouraging people to take some sort of living minion of some sort. So you can see the end result of turn 1. We were using my Simulacrum 29 model as Killjoy because none of us in the store actually owned a Killjoy. I may have to actually buy one and paint one up just for the scenario because I had a lot of fun with it. I had the Punk Zombies move up as a wall, and then Rafkin be behind them and give them the hard to kill ability with Preserve Bodies, I think is what it's called. So Killjoy moved up and smacked one of my Punk Zombies down to 1 wound, but the rest of them were fine. Everything else just kind of spread out. The Viks actually ran away, which I thought was interesting, considering we wanted to be near Killjoy to get the points. So Jenna basically split her crew up into 2 parts, had a Ronin and Taylor run off to one side, and the Viks and everybody else ran off to the other side. And here you can see my crew kind of spread out. I wasn't 100% sure why she was doing that, but, whatever works. So she did that, and her turn 1 was pretty short. Mine was similarly pretty short. I just basically moved up my guys in a brick. I was going for the brick strategy. Turn 2, she decided to change course and moved Taylor back over to the other side of the board. She moved the Librarian around behind the hill, which I think was a really good idea, because in case Taylor or the Viks or the Ronin got charged by Killjoy, they'd be sitting there within her line of sight, and she'd be able to heal them. So that was a really good idea. And she also moved up her Convict Gunslinger over 2 turns up to a nice shooting position, which is really good. On a side note, I believe that her crew is painted by Pat, who recently won the Through the Breach logo design contest, and his crews are all gorgeous. They're really good, and they actually worked really nicely on this board with the basing he had on it, so I was really excited for the game. Here you can see the Sword Vic hanging out with the Ronin in their own little crew. I'm sorry, it was actually the Sword Vic who ran off with the other Ronin, not Taylor. Taylor actually stuck with the regular crew. But it doesn't really matter because you can use the Viks to pretty much switch position with them no matter where they're on the board, which is what she ended up doing. The Sword Vic ended up walking up and placing the Gun Vic. I'm sorry, the Gun Vic moved up and placed the Sword Vic near to, or right behind a building so that I couldn't see it with Nicodem, because if she'd placed it closer, Nicodem could have paralyzed it, and that would have been bad news bears for her. And here you can see the aftermath. I had my punk zombies, a couple of my punk zombies had charged Killjoy. I forgot he had black blood, so the punk zombie that I had sitting at 1 wound died. I forgot the slow to die action because this is an action or two, like an activation or two later. So that one died, and then a couple other ones got knocked down very, very low, thanks to the black blood ability. And I ruled it as the black blood counting as killing a model. So the way that worked out is I ended up losing 2 models to black blood straight out. The Sword Vic ran in, killed off Killjoy, whirlwinded, killed off one of my punk zombies. So that in one turn, Jenna got 2 points for first blood, and then 2 points effectively for the scenario because she had lost no models to Killjoy and killed him. Whereas I was planning on losing my morale duel and then killing off Killjoy, so I was hoping to get at least 3 points out of that. But that ended up not working out, so that was unfortunate for me. Here you can see Jenna's crew moved up a little bit more. The Ronin's just kind of providing a little bit of back support, and the Gun Vic was the Sword Vic was kind of out there, really in a lot of danger. Fortunately for her, on turn 3 or 4, I think it might have turn 3, she won initiative and was able to swap out the Gun Vic with the Sword Vic. The Sword Vic took a bunch of wounds and was paralyzed by Nicodem, but the Sword Vic lived, which is the important thing. She took a bunch of damage, but the Librarian was able to heal them both up to full, I believe. Actually, I think the Sword Vic was at 1 wound and had taken 1 wound, had 1 wound left on it, and then the Gun Vic was at full. So really good play on her point. It was really, really good strategy. Here you can see an overview of the board of how things turned out. There were a lot of dead models in this game, mostly mine, but Killjoy drops 3 corpse counters when he dies, so I had a lot of corpse counters to work with. Here you can see the spread of mindless zombies because I was going for my Surrounded by Death. I forgot to mention my schemes. I had Surrounded by Death and Steel Relic, and the Relic was stolen by one of my cannon remains stupidly because I forgot that you don't get to take the action again if you take the Relic, so I should have done it with something a little more hardy like Rafkin or Nicodem or something. I don't know. As it were, I ended up losing that dog, so I ended up losing a point, which was pretty unfortunate. Rafkin actually did pretty well this game. I had him preserving bodies and which is his one action, I believe, for stalling composition. Yeah, preserve bodies. Whenever a corpse counter is discarded within 6 inches of him, he gets a body part. And there were just a million corpse counters. So what I did is I had Rafkin activate, preserve bodies. He healed up something, and I think he took an attack or something like that. Then Nicodem used Arise, sacrificed all the corpse counters to create mindless zombies, which generated a bunch of body parts for Rafkin. Here you can see Nicodem hanging out with the Grave Spirit. And then he summoned a Rogue Necromancy, which discarded even more, which meant I ended the turn with something like 11 body parts on Rafkin. It was pretty awesome. And the next turn I was able to draw a card. I was able to draw, I think, like a 9 or 10 of crows, which is what you need to use as summoning spell, which is what I did. So I basically ended up with a free Rogue Necromancy and a free pair of Flesh Constructs, because the turn before I summoned 2 Flesh Constructs. So I had a lot of monsters sitting on the table. They were able to kill off the Sword Vic and eventually made short work of the Gun Vic. I put a dog up near the Convict Gunslinger to keep him busy so that he couldn't kill off everything. Jenna was she tried so hard to get Suppressing Fire off for a large portion of the game, and every time she did it, it was on one of my models, and it always had higher willpower than her cast, so it ended up not working out very well for her. But it was a very good bait and switch because I focused a little bit more attention on the Gunslinger than I should have, and that really bought her a lot of time, which was good for her. You can see Nicodem hanging out with Rafkin again. They didn't move much from where they were. I didn't think I needed to. I figured that Jenna's hidden scheme was holdout or bodyguard, and I killed off the Viks pretty easily. So I thought I didn't have to worry about that. However, Jenna kept on seppukuing. She seppuku'd one of her Ronin, which, makes sense. The Ronin was about to die. And then she had another Ronin on the other side of the board, which she just seppuku'd for seemingly no reason. I'm like, well, that's odd. I'm not sure why she did that. The reason why is she had gathered Soulstones. I'd used up all my Soulstones, killing off her Viks and doing a bunch of other stuff. So she ended the game with 3 Soulstones, which was more than my 0. So she got 2 points for her first blood, 1 point for her gather Soulstones. She got 2 points for the strategy, which was killing off Killjoy and losing the fewest models. And I only ended up with 4. I got 1 point for my Steel Relic because my model died, and 2 points for Surrounded by Death, and then 1 point for getting charged by Killjoy. So it was a really, really awesome game. It ended up being 5-4 in the Viks' favor. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I'll try and do a video of the Hanging Tree scenario at some point. It was a pretty hilarious scenario based around TPing the Hanging Tree. We had the Ortegas playing against, I think I had Nick McMorning for that one, and it was pretty interesting. But I hope you guys enjoyed this, and check out the scenarios on the forums. Give them a try. They were actually a lot of fun. There's a couple changes I would make to both of them that I posted. Give them a try, and I hope you enjoy them. I'll see you guys next time.